Biblioteca Vasconcelos, Ciudad de Mexico, Architecture, Knowledge, and Urban Imagination. The Biblioteca Vasconcelos is a most ambitious cultural project in Mexico City. Opened in the mid 2000s, it quickly became known as the Mega Library, not only because of its scale, but because it reimagines what a public library can be: a social space, an ecological intervention, and also a pretty major architectural statement all at once. The Vasconcelos is in the Buena Vista area of Mexico City, adjacent to former rail infrastructure and dense urban fabric. The project emerged during a period when Mexico sought highly visible cultural investments meant to symbolize modernization and public access to education. Designed by architect Alberto Calach and collaborators, the building opened in 2006 and quickly gained attention for its monumental scale and experimental interior, also its sheer modernist beauty. However, the story is not uncomplicated. Shortly after opening, structural and infrastructure problems forced a temporary closure, sparking debates about speed, politics, and public spending in cultural mega projects. However, has been opened and for a while now, and inside, the architecture is truly spatial and the experience is spectacular, as mentioned. The most striking feature of the Vasconcelos is the sensation of suspension. Bookshelves appear to float in midair, stacked across multiple levels and connected by bridges and walkways. This is less a conventional library and more a three-dimensional labyrinth of knowledge. Architecturally, the building stretches roughly 250 meters in length and integrates steel, glass, and concrete. Natural light and open volumes dominate the interior, reducing the hierarchy between floors and encouraging wandering rather than linear movement. There is a wonderful flow between interior and exterior made possible due to the moderate climate of Mexico City. One of the most striking qualities of the Biblioteca Vasconcelos is its commitment to transparency and openness, both as architectural principles and as conceptual statements about knowledge itself. Rather than organizing books within enclosed rooms or opaque stacks, the design exposes its structure, allowing visitors to see across multiple levels at once. Glass, steel, and open shelving dissolve traditional boundaries, creating a space where movement, visibility, and curiosity are constantly encouraged. The eye travels freely across bridges, walkways, and suspended shelves, making the entire collection feel present at once rather than hidden behind walls. This openness operates on many levels. Architecturally, it produces a sense of lightness and continuity, eliminating rigid distinctions between floors and departments. Socially, it reinforces the democratic idea of the public library as a shared civic space, accessible and legible to everyone who enters. Visitors are rarely confined to narrow corridors. Instead, they remain visually connected to the broader environment, aware of others reading, moving, and exploring within the same collective space. Transparency here becomes not only a material condition, but also a social one, expressing openness as a cultural value. At the same time, the vastness of the interior introduces a more complex emotional experience. The seemingly endless repetition of shelving, the layered perspectives, and the seemingly boundless accumulation of books can evoke feelings of awe and disorientation at the same time. In this sense, the library recalls literary metaphors such as the Library of Babel by Jorge Luis Borges, where the idea of a library expands beyond a physical institution into an infinite universe of knowledge. Borges imagines a space in which every possible book exists, a structure that is once rational and incomprehensible, overwhelming and exhilarating. And it's pretty amazing. And I got that feeling from being in the Biblioteca Vasconcelos. Now, obviously, the library itself does not seek literal infinity, yet it does certainly resonate with this wonderful metaphor. The suspended stacks and long sight lines create this impression that the library extends beyond what can be fully comprehended at a single moment. Importantly, this tension between clarity and excess defines the emotional power of the space. An important part of understanding the design of Biblioteca Vasconcelos lies in examining its material components, particularly hardware, shelving systems, and furniture that all define how visitors physically experience the space. While the building is often discussed in terms of its monumental scale and very dramatic architecture, its atmosphere is equally shaped by the precise technical decisions made at the level of construction and interior design. These elements work together to create an environment that feels both industrial yet very inviting, emphasizing functionality while maintaining a strong visual identity. The most recognizable feature of the interior is the system of suspended steel bookshelves. Unlike traditional library stacks, which usually rest heavily on the floor and divide spaces into enclosed aisles, the shelves in the Biblioteca Vasconcelos appear to float within the large central volume. They are built from modular steel components that repeat rhythmically throughout the building, creating a coherent structural grid. The open frame design allows light and sight lines to pass through the stacks, which prevents the space from feeling crowded, despite the enormous number of books that are held on site. The hardware also supports this system. It is deliberately visible. The design exposes steel brackets, connections, and joints, allowing visitors to read the logic of how the building is assembled. Bridges and elevated walkways connect different sections of shelving, and their railings are made of slender metal lines that maintain transparency across the interior. The placement of furniture also reflects the architectural logic of the building. Tables are aligned along with the main circulation paths or positioned near the edges of the shelving systems. This was very pleasant as a working space because when I was in the library working, was able to gaze away from what I was focusing on and travel through the whole space. And it became this almost reflective exercise onto what I was thinking about. It was quite wonderful. The lighting also follows a similar restrained approach. The lighting systems are linear. They seemed aligned with the geometry of the shelves. And there were some nice circular pendants that were in the large atrium sections. There's also art inside this architecture. One of the most memorable elements of the interior is the hanging whale skeleton artwork, a defining element designed by Gabriel Orozco called Mobile Matrix from 2006. According to Orozco, the project began when Mexico's cultural authorities invited him to create an artwork for the new library, which was at the time a major national cultural initiative. After visiting the nearly completed building and encountering its vast open interior, he envisioned a whale skeleton suspended at the center of the space. The realization of the sculpture itself was complex and unusual. Because whales are protected animals, acquiring a skeleton required cooperation with scientific and environmental authorities. Working with specialists from Mexico's natural history community, Orozco traveled to Baja California's whale sanctuaries to locate and excavate a suitable specimen. Once the skeleton arrived in Mexico City, restoration and assembly became another large-scale collaborative endeavor. Specialists cleaned and preserved the bones, reconstructed missing elements, and designed a metal armature that would allow the skeleton to hang safely in space. Equally important to the work is Orozco's use of graphite drawing applied directly onto the bones. Rather than treating the drawing as ornament, he describes it as functional mapping of movement. Public reception to the work reflected the cultural significance of the library itself. Orozco noted that some visitors expected a larger object, suggesting that public imagination had amplified the work's scale. Nevertheless, the sculpture became one of the library's most beloved features, functioning almost as an accidental encounter. Another element of the design of the site is the integration of nature. Kalash envisioned the library as both a cultural and ecological intervention, a structure embedded within the botanical gardens and green space meant to transform a formerly harsh urban area. It was beautifully landscaped, and the presentation, when compared to the building, was quite wonderful. I was sitting outside for a while, taking a break from my writing, and it was just so contemplative and lovely. And for me, I was taken back to time I've spent in rural Mexico. Beyond the architecture and site design, however, the Vasconcelos functions as a social hub. It may hold hundreds of thousands of volumes and include reading rooms, digital services, and programming. But there were also people hanging out there. There were people dancing in the courtyards, and there were people like me, when I was taking a break from writing, who were going around and just photographing and really observing the space. Like, it's definitely a destination for people who like architecture and design. And it has become a beloved building of the folks who are using it in Mexico and folks who are visiting. So for me, it is an example of a very well-designed, beautiful piece of public architecture that's also very popular with the public that it was created for, which I think is really important. Ultimately, the Vasconcelos is so attractive because it is so successful on multiple levels. An icon of contemporary design, a democratic space for learning, as well as a shared civic experience. I enjoyed it very much, and I will be back. It is a great place to work. So thank you, Biblioteca Vasconcelos. It was a great pleasure working